Have you ever walked out into your garden on a blazing hot afternoon, only to find your beautiful prized tomato plants slumped over and looking like they are begging for mercy? It is a heartbreaking sight. Today, we are tackling a massive problem that ruins gardens every single summer. We are going to learn exactly how to help your tomatoes when it is dangerously hot outside. I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to learn some surprising secrets that will completely change how you care for your garden during a heat wave. In fact, one of the things you are probably doing right now to help your plants is actually killing them faster. Sounds crazy, right? Well, let us see if you are making this crucial mistake. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you water your tomatoes in the morning or in the evening? Go ahead. Let us start a friendly debate in the comments, and now we'll reveal the absolute best answer later in the video. Before we can save our plants, we need to understand where they come from. You see, tomatoes originally hail from the western coast of South America. They absolutely love warmth and sunshine. But there is a massive difference between a nice warm summer day and a brutal, scorching heat wave. The reality is that tomatoes have a temperature limit. Once the thermometer creeps above 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, these plants go into survival mode. They stop focusing on making those delicious, juicy fruits and instead put all their energy into simply staying alive. They shut down their systems, their pollen becomes sterile, and they start losing moisture faster than they can drink it up. If we do not step in and change the environment for them, they will simply give up. So, let us dive into exactly how we can step in and become the heroes our garden needs. Let us start with the foundation of your garden, which is watering. But we are not talking about just splashing some water around. We need to talk about deep watering techniques. There is a massive myth out there that when it is hot, you need to water your plants a little bit every single day. This is actually terrible advice. When you give your tomatoes a shallow drink every day, their roots get incredibly lazy. They stay right at the surface of the soil because they know the water is always there. But what happens when the sun bakes that top inch of dirt? Those lazy surface roots get fried instantly. Instead, you need to water deeply and less often. Imagine you are trying to push the water down 8 to 12 inches into the earth. When you water deeply, the roots are forced to dive down deep into the soil to chase that moisture. Down there, the earth is naturally much cooler and insulated from the blazing sun above. By training your plants to grow deep roots, you are giving them a built-in defense mechanism against extreme surface heat. So, grab your hose, turn it on a slow trickle, and let it soak the ground thoroughly. Your tomatoes will build a strong, deep root system that can survive even the worst summer days. Now that we have the water down deep, how do we keep it from evaporating right back into the sky? The answer is the magic of mulching. If you are leaving the soil completely bare around the base of your tomato plants, you are making a huge mistake. Bare soil absorbs the heat from the sun like a sponge. It gets incredibly hot, which literally bakes the roots and evaporates all that precious water you just applied. Mulch acts like a thick, cozy, protective blanket for your soil. You can use straw, wood chips, dried grass clippings, or even shredded leaves. When you put down a 3 to 4 inch layer of mulch, you are creating a barrier between the hot sun and the cool earth. Let me give you an example. Have you ever walked barefoot on black asphalt in the middle of July? It burns your feet instantly. But if you step onto a thick patch of green grass, it feels cool and refreshing. That is exactly what mulch does for your tomato roots. It keeps the soil temperature stable. It traps the moisture underneath so you do not have to water as often, and as a bonus, it breaks down over time to feed your plants. If your garden is completely bare dirt right now, fixing that is step number 1. Let us address a very common misunderstanding about sunlight. People always say that tomatoes need 100% full sun all day long to thrive. While they do love light, when the temperatures push past 90 degrees, that intense afternoon sun becomes a deadly enemy. This is where installing a shade cloth becomes an absolute game changer. Think about it like this. When you go to the beach on a scorching hot day, you eventually seek out a beach umbrella, right? Your plants need an umbrella too. A shade cloth is a specially woven fabric that blocks a certain percentage of the sun's rays while still letting light and air pass through. For tomatoes, a 30 to 40% shade cloth is absolutely perfect. You do not want to block all the light, just the harshest rays during the peak heat of the afternoon, usually between noon and 4 o'clock. You can build a simple frame using bamboo poles or PVC pipes and drape the cloth right over your garden bed. It instantly drops the ambient temperature around the leaves by several degrees. By giving them a little bit of afternoon shade, you relieve a massive amount of stress from the plant, allowing it to keep functioning normally instead of shutting down. Have you ever looked at your tomato plants during a heat wave and noticed that all those beautiful little yellow flowers are just drying up and falling off the stem? It is incredibly frustrating because every flower that falls is a tomato you will never get to eat. This condition is called blossom drop, and it is a direct result of extreme heat. Here is the fascinating science behind what is actually happening. When the daytime temperatures stay above 90 degrees, or the nighttime temperatures refuse to drop below 75 degrees, the pollen inside the tomato flower literally becomes too sticky. It clumps together, making it impossible for the flower to properly pollinate itself. The plant is incredibly smart. It realizes that the flower is useless and that growing fruit right now would require too much energy. So, it simply aborts the mission and drops the flower to save itself. There is no magical spray that will stop this once the heat hits. The only way to prevent blossom drop is to lower the temperature around the plant using the shade cloth we just talked about, or by patiently waiting for the heat wave to break. Do not panic and throw away the plant. Once the weather cools down, it will start producing healthy flowers again. Another terrible thing that happens to tomatoes in the blazing sun is a condition called sunscald. If you have ever seen a tomato fruit with a large, weird, white or pale yellow blister on the side facing the sun, you have seen sunscald. It is quite literally a severe sunburn on the skin of the tomato. Just like human skin, the delicate skin of a growing tomato cannot handle intense, direct ultraviolet radiation for hours on end, especially when the temperature is sky high. The exposed tissue literally burns, dies, and turns into a papery, white, sunken patch. This ruins the fruit and opens it up to rot and insects. This is exactly why the leaves of the plant are so important. The leaves act as a natural canopy, casting shadows over the developing fruit to keep them safe. If your fruit is completely exposed, you need to intervene. You can gently drape a lightweight cloth over the clusters of fruit, or strategically place a physical barrier to block that harsh afternoon sun. Treat your ripening tomatoes like a pale person at the beach. If you do not give them some shade or protection, they are going to get badly burned. This brings us to a very controversial topic in the gardening world, which is pruning. A lot of gardeners absolutely love to prune their tomato plants. They snip off the side shoots, cut away the lower branches, and try to make the plant look incredibly neat and tidy. But here is a massive warning. You must stop pruning your tomatoes during a severe heat wave. Remember how we just talked about sunscald and how the leaves protect the fruit? If you go out there with your scissors and chop off all the foliage, you are stripping the plant of its natural defenses. You are taking away its umbrella right when the sun is at its most punishing. Yes, pruning is great for airflow and disease prevention during normal, mild weather. But when it is 95 degrees outside, your plant needs every single leaf it can get to cast shade on the fruit and the soil below. Furthermore, Every time you cut the plant, you create an open wound. The plant has to spend precious energy healing that wound, energy it desperately needs just to survive the heat. So, put the pruning shears away, let the plant get a little bit wild and bushy, and save the haircuts for cooler weather. Let us shift gears and talk about those of you growing tomatoes in containers or pots. Container gardening is fantastic, but during a heatwave it becomes an incredibly dangerous game. Think about what a pot actually is. It is an isolated bucket of soil, totally separated from the cool, deep earth. When the sun beats down on a plastic or terracotta pot, especially a dark-coloured one, the temperature inside that pot skyrockets. The soil inside can easily reach over 100 degrees, which literally cooks the roots of your tomato plant alive. The huge advantage you have, however, is mobility. If you know a massive heatwave is coming, you can physically pick up your pots and move them. Shift them to a spot on your patio that gets morning sun but is completely shaded in the harsh afternoon. If you cannot move them, you need to shade the pots themselves. Wrap the containers in light-coloured fabric, place taller potted plants in front of them to block the sun, or even lean pieces of cardboard against the pots. You must keep the sun off the sides of the containers to prevent the root zone from turning into an absolute oven. Earlier, I asked you a question about the absolute best time to water your garden. Let us finally settle that debate. The greatest time to water your tomatoes, especially during a heatwave, is very early in the morning. We are talking about 6 or 7 in the morning, right as the sun is coming up. Why is this so crucial? Because after a long night, the soil has finally cooled down. When you apply water to cool soil, it soaks in deeply and efficiently, without evaporating immediately into the hot air. This gives the plant a massive reservoir of moisture to draw from before the brutal heat of the afternoon hits. Now, there is a persistent myth that if you get water on the leaves in the morning, the water droplets will act like tiny magnifying glasses and burn the leaves when the sun comes out. This is totally false. Science has proven that water droplets evaporate long before they can cause any sun damage. Watering in the evening is the second best option, but it comes with a risk. If you soak the plants at night and the leaves stay wet in the dark, you are creating a perfect humid breeding ground for fungal diseases. Always aim for the early morning. Here is an action you might be tempted to take when your plants look sad, but you absolutely must avoid it. Do not fertilize your tomatoes during a heat wave. Put the fertilizer box down. When gardeners see their plants wilting, dropping flowers and looking stressed, their first instinct is to feed them. They think the plant needs vitamins or a boost of energy. This is a fatal error. Fertilizer is designed to push the plant to grow new leaves, stems, and fruit. But when it is over 90 degrees, the plant does not want to grow. It is in strict survival mode. If you dump heavy nitrogen fertilizer onto a heat-stressed plant, you are forcing it to try and produce new growth when it barely has enough water to keep its existing leaves alive. This causes massive internal stress and can easily push a struggling plant right over the edge into death. Furthermore, synthetic fertilizers contain salts. If the soil is slightly dry, those salts can literally burn the already sensitive, thirsty roots. Wait until the weather breaks, the temperatures drop back into the 80s, and the plant has fully recovered its strength before you even think about offering it a meal. Let us look at a long-term strategy to help your garden survive the heat. It all comes down to the actual structure of your soil and its ability to hold on to moisture. If your soil is very sandy, water just runs right through it, leaving the roots dry an hour later. If it is hard clay, the water pools on top and bakes in the sun. The ultimate secret weapon against extreme heat is organic matter, specifically high-quality compost. When you mix a thick layer of compost into your garden beds, It acts like billions of tiny microscopic sponges. These organic sponges grab onto the water you provide and hold it directly in the root zone. Even when the top layer of soil feels dry and the sun is blazing, that compost down below is slowly releasing moisture back to the tomato roots exactly when they need it most. Adding compost also improves the soil structure, allowing roots to easily push deeper into the earth where it is naturally cooler. While you cannot change your soil structure overnight during a heat wave, top dressing your beds with compost right before you apply your mulch will create an incredibly resilient environment for your plants. While we always focus on the blistering sun and the high temperatures, there is an invisible enemy that makes a heat wave 10 times worse. I'm talking about hot summer winds. Imagine taking a hairdryer, turning it on the highest heat setting and blowing it directly onto a wet paper towel. That towel is going to dry out in seconds. That is exactly what a hot, dry wind does to the large, beautiful leaves of your tomato plants. The wind literally rips the moisture right out of the pores of the leaves, a process called transpiration, much faster than the roots can suck water up from the soil. This leads to severe, immediate wilting. If your garden is in an open, windy area, you need to create a windbreak. This does not have to be a permanent brick wall. You can string up some canvas fabric between two posts, use tightly woven shade cloth on the windy side of the garden, or even strategically place large potted shrubs to block the breeze. By stopping that hot, dry air from constantly rushing over the foliage, you drastically reduce the amount of water the plant loses, giving it a fighting chance to stay hydrated. Did you know that extreme heat can actually stop your tomatoes from turning red? It is one of the most surprising facts about growing this fruit. We associate bright red, ripe tomatoes with hot summer days, but there is a limit. The beautiful red colour in tomatoes comes from a compound called lycopene. However, when the temperature of the fruit itself gets above 85 degrees, the plant completely stops producing lycopene and carotene. The ripening process literally hits a brick wall. Your green tomatoes will just sit on the vine, refusing to change colour, while slowly baking in the sun. If a massive heat wave is in the forecast, the smartest thing you can do is harvest any tomatoes that have started to show a little bit of colour. Even if they are just slightly blushing orange or pink, pick them immediately. Bring them inside your cool, air-conditioned house and set them on a kitchen counter away from direct sunlight. Because the temperature inside your home is perfect, they will continue to ripen beautifully, turn bright red, and taste absolutely delicious, saving them from rotting or getting sunscald out in the brutal garden. Sometimes, despite doing everything perfectly, the weather is just too intense for the type of tomato you are growing. If you live in an area that constantly gets brutal summer heat waves, you need to start planning for next year by choosing the right genetics. Not all tomatoes are created equal. Many popular heirloom varieties originally came from cooler climates and absolutely despise the heat. However, plant breeders have developed specific heat-tolerant varieties that are built like absolute tanks. Look for tomato varieties with names that give away their superpower, like Solar Fire, Heat Master, Somerset, or Tropic. These specific types have been bred to continue setting fruit even when the temperatures climb into the 90s. They often have thicker foliage to protect the fruit and root systems designed to handle the stress. Trying to force a delicate, cool-weather tomato to survive in a desert climate is a losing battle. By simply switching to a heat-tolerant variety next season, you will save yourself an enormous amount of stress, time, and heartache, and you will actually get to harvest tomatoes in August. Let us talk about the absolute best way to deliver water to your plants during a heat wave. If you are still standing in the middle of your garden with a hose, spraying water all over the leaves and the surface of the dirt, you need to upgrade your system immediately. Overhead watering is incredibly inefficient. When you spray water through the hot air, a massive percentage of it evaporates before it ever touches the ground. The ultimate solution is installing a simple drip irrigation system or using soaker hoses. These sit directly on the surface of the soil, entirely hidden beneath your layer of mulch. When you turn them on, they slowly weep water directly into the earth, right where the roots are waiting. There is zero evaporation. The water goes exactly where it is needed, deep into the soil profile. This keeps the surface of the soil dry, which prevents weed seeds from sprouting, and it keeps the leaves dry, which eliminates fungal diseases. Drip irrigation is like giving your tomato plants an intravenous line of hydration. It is the most effective way to keep them perfectly watered without wasting a single drop. We need to discuss a very dangerous trap that well-meaning gardeners fall into every summer. It is the trap of overwatering out of panic. Picture this. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it is 95 degrees outside, and you look at your tomato plants. The leaves are completely wilted, drooping, and look desperately sad. Your immediate instinct is to grab the hose and flood the soil with water. Stop right there. Wilting in the peak heat of the afternoon is actually a normal defense mechanism. The plant droops its leaves to expose less surface area to the sun, trying to conserve moisture. If you check the soil underneath the mulch and it is still damp, do not add more water. If you flood already wet soil, you will literally drown the roots. Tomato roots need oxygen to survive. If they are constantly sitting in hot mud, they will rot, and the plant will die a very quick death. The true test of whether a plant needs water is to check it the next morning. If it is still wilted at sunrise, it is truly thirsty. If it perked back up overnight, leave the hose alone. There is a brilliant natural way to protect your tomatoes from the heat that does not require buying expensive shade cloth or building structures. It is a technique called companion planting for shade. The concept is incredibly simple. You use taller, heat-loving plants to act as living shields for your more sensitive tomatoes. For example, if you know the harsh, burning sun always hits your garden from the west in the late afternoon, you can plant a dense row of tall sunflowers, corn, or pole beans on the western edge of your tomato patch. As these companion plants grow tall, they will naturally cast a long, cooling shadow over your tomatoes exactly when the sun is at its most punishing. It is nature's own shade cloth. Not only does this cool down your tomatoes, but plants like sunflowers also attract incredible pollinators and beneficial insects that will help your entire garden thrive. It requires a little bit of planning in the spring to position everything correctly, but creating a diverse, multi-layered garden canopy is one of the smartest ways to beat the extreme summer heat. Let us solve a very common mystery that freaks out a lot of new gardeners during the summer. You walk outside and notice that the leaves on your tomato plant are rolling inward, curling up tightly like little green cigars. It looks bizarre, and many people instantly panic, assuming their plant has caught a terrible virus or disease. While leaf curl can sometimes be a sign of pests, during a heat wave, it is almost always a condition called physiological leaf roll. It is nothing more than the plant reacting to extreme environmental stress. When the sun is too bright, the air is too dry, and the heat is too intense, the plant rolls its leaves upward to protect its top surface and reduce the amount of moisture it loses to evaporation. It is essentially trying to make itself smaller to hide from the sun. The older, lower leaves usually curl first, and they become quite thick and leathery. Here is the good news. While it looks alarming, physiological leaf roll does not actually harm the plant or reduce your fruit harvest. It is just the plant adapting. Ensure your watering is consistent, add some mulch, and do not panic. You might be wondering if you can just spray your plants with a hose to cool them off. The idea of misting plants during a heat wave is a highly debated topic. If you look at massive commercial tomato greenhouses, they often use overhead misting systems to dramatically drop the air temperature inside the glass building. It works perfectly for them. However, trying to replicate this in a small backyard garden is incredibly risky. If you spray cold water from a hose onto boiling hot tomato leaves in the middle of the afternoon sun, the sudden temperature shock can actually damage the plant tissues. More importantly, if you miss the plants late in the day and the leaves do not have time to dry before the sun goes down, you are inviting disaster. Wet leaves in the cool night air create the ultimate breeding ground for early blight, late blight, and powdery mildew. Fungal spores will absolutely destroy your crop faster than the heat ever could. Unless you have a highly sophisticated automated misting system that runs only during specific morning hours, it is best to keep the water off the leaves entirely. Everyone is obsessed with checking the weather app to see how hot the air temperature is going to get. But when it comes to saving your tomatoes, the air temperature is only half the story. You really need to be paying attention to the soil temperature. The root system is the brain and the heart of the tomato plant. If the roots are happy, the plant can withstand a lot of abuse above ground. But once the soil temperature down at the root zone creeps above 85 degrees, everything stops. The roots literally lose their physical ability to absorb water and vital nutrients, no matter how much you water them. They go totally dormant. This is why plants in bare soil or black plastic pots die so quickly. If you are serious about hot weather gardening, get a cheap soil thermometer. Stick it into the dirt about 4 inches deep. If it reads over 85 degrees, you have a major emergency on your hands. You need to immediately apply thicker mulch, water deeply with cool water, and get shade over that soil to bring the temperature down before the roots completely shut down and starve the plant. Finally, we need to understand the absolute importance of the night shift. How a tomato plant recovers at night dictates whether it will survive the next day. Tomatoes absolutely need their beauty sleep. For a tomato plant to successfully process the sugars it made during the day, rest its systems, and prepare for the next round of heat, the nighttime temperatures must drop below 70 or 75 degrees. This cool-down period is critical. The plant rehydrates itself, pumps water back up into the stems, and unwilts its leaves. However, if you are experiencing a brutal heat wave where the temperatures stay 80 degrees or higher all night long, the plant never gets a chance to rest. It stays in a constant state of high stress, burning energy 24 hours a day. Over several days, this exhaustion will severely stunt the plant or kill it outright. While you cannot control the weather, you can help by ensuring the soil is deeply watered and heavily mulched. Moist soil retains a more stable, cooler temperature overnight than dry dirt, giving the roots at least a small pocket of relief while they wait for the morning. And there you have it, the ultimate turning point for your summer garden. You do not have to stand by helplessly while the blazing sun destroys your hard work. By switching to deep watering, burying your soil under a thick blanket of mulch, and putting up that crucial shade cloth, you can completely change the environment for your tomatoes. Remember, do not panic if they wilt in the afternoon. Never prune them during a heat wave, and absolutely put that fertilizer away until the weather cools down. You now have the knowledge to outsmart the heat and keep those plants thriving. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something new today that is going to save your tomatoes, please hit that subscribe button. Give this video a big thumbs up and do not forget to leave a comment below. I want to know, what is the hottest temperature your garden has ever survived? Share your stories down below, and I will see you in the next video.